Hey superstars! So I'm going to introduce myself because I've obviously done the last two videos and somebody actually suggested that I should turn this into a podcast because it's great podcast material. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm currently looking um, into the ins and outs of how to get it onto places like Spotify, etc. And I do believe it's very similar to how I have been doing, um, how I've been distributing all my tracks. It's very similar. I just need to find a podcast distributor rather than a song distributor. Um, so I am Holly. My name is Holly. I am better known as High Energy Holes, and I do run an events business, and I have done for a very, very long time. And I'm a DJ, children's entertainer, songwriter. I am everything in between in the entertainment world. But I'm also a mental health coach and I've been through the ringer. So that is what my podcasts are all about. So welcome in, everybody. So I'm doing a bit better. I'm still a little bit on a roller coaster going up and down with emotions because I'm kind of in recovery. So if anybody knows, so the last two videos that I done was all about panic attacks and anxiety. And it's not your general anxiety. It's fight and flight and living with everyday triggers and past trauma. Um, so in my last videos, I was talking about how I have been really struggling, and I have obviously been suppressing something because I've recognized patterns in the last I don't know how many years now, sort of the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, I've noticed patterns. And the pattern is usually that I'm suppressing or ignoring something, but at the same time, it's right before a transition. Now, there is a lot of things that I'm navigating, and there is obviously a destination I'm trying to reach, and there is a lot of things in between that need to be dealt with before that can happen. And I'm working through that, and it just takes time. However, there are obviously other issues that I have been ignoring. So when I said that I was suppressing something, and there was obviously something in my subconscious that would surface eventually, and I would get clarity and I would understand what it was, that has come to light. And I now recognize that my issues, that are really driving the way that I deal with stress and why anxiety and panic come up so rigidly is because of childhood trauma. Yes, ladies and gents, childhood trauma. It is all stemming from the way I learned as a child to deal with stress, to deal with things that go wrong, to deal with issues in my life. And I did touch base on one particular story, which I will just recap here, for those of you that didn't hear it in my last podcast, but please do check them out once they're live. Check out my previous videos, but once they're up, they'll be in an order as a podcast. But basically, it was about when I was at school and about things that got embedded into my head when I was like 10 years old. And it's not just that particular year. There's lots and lots of other things that have added to these particular issues. There's lots of things that have just piled up, and as everybody knows, when you keep piling things up, everything's going to collapse and fall and explode, and there's only so much you can do. You have to clear out the rubbish. You can't just let it pile high, and this is the issue. For many years I have been undoing lots of past conditioning, which doesn't align, and trying to undo past traumas. And it never really dawned on me, really, that the way I am now, I mean, I suppose in some warped mind I did, but not to the degree that I've really realized that the reason I shut down when I'm stressed, the reason I unintentionally push people away, the reason why I go inward and I get so anxious is largely because I learned as a child through many different forms that I was insignificant, that I didn't matter, that that I wasn't worth anybody's time. And the story that I told previously was about a teacher at my primary school. So I started off at an infant school in my hometown. I then progressed to a village primary school when I went up, because the school that I was at as an infant only went up to the age of 7. You then had to go to the other side, which was for the juniors. But my parents wanted me to go to a village school, which is absolutely fine. Um, it was hard, obviously, starting a new school with new people. My brother was already there when I started because he went the year previously. And it was fine the first year because one of the teachers that had been at my infant school had started there the year I started and became my teacher. And she was fabulous. She was amazing. And she became a family friend outside of the school as we got older. And unfortunately, she lost her life to cancer many years ago, and it was so sad. And I miss her because she was the most amazing teacher, and I just yeah, she was just fantastic. um but obviously when I went into year 5, I had the teacher from hell, and I was already getting anxious about going into her class anyway, because I was brutally scared of her before I even, or before she even became my teacher. And I say teacher lightly because she didn't teach me anything other than I was not worth anyone's time, and I wasn't worth teaching, and I fell so behind. I fell so behind because she just wouldn't teach me. I didn't understand when she would stand up in class at the board, and we had blackboards in those days with the chalk. She'd just stand up there, and I just didn't understand, the way she taught. I didn't understand how all the other teachers prior would take the time to explain things in a different format to me. And I seen a post today, somebody put a post on Facebook, and it was talking about kids with ADHD, and it was talking about how they need a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra support, and for somebody to just explain things a little bit differently, because once that light bulb goes on and they get it, they'll complete the work faster than anybody else. And I would actually put myself in that category, that I can really sort of struggle and procrastinate for a long, long time, thinking I don't know how to do this. And I'll get really stressed, and I'll pull my hair out, and I'll get so overwhelmed that anxiety will set in. And I have to say that recent events that pushed me over the edge was actually down to a contractor role that just kept changing the goalposts. And I could never actually get to grips with what was expected of me. One minute it was like, you got to do this. Then it was like, oh, no, 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 we need you to do this. Then it was like, oh, no, 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 we need you to do that. And then they would just keep changing the format and telling me something different. And I just actually couldn't get to grips with what they wanted. And it just pushed me over the edge, because I was just like, okay, I really need to do this work. I really need this contractor role. I really need the money, and there's all these things driving you. And I was just getting pushed over the edge. And I was just like, I can't do this. And I had to literally walk away, because obviously, as you know, for the last couple of weeks, I have just been living in fight and flight and hell. And I've sort of connected it back to school, this primary school and this teacher's class, trying to understand how to do something, and just basically trying to go to the teacher and ask for help. And she's having a laugh and a giggle with the academics. And then she just yells at me because, almost like, it's like, well, what do you want? What do you want? I, I'm busy. It was like, okay, she didn't have time to teach me. She's not interested in helping me because I'm insignificant. I'm not in the box with all the academics that don't need help, and she's quite happy with those. But anybody, because it wasn't just me. She picked on my brother as well. She picked on my brother heavily, and I always felt like we were. I mean, I know there were others in the class that got picked on too, but to me at the time, I was only highlighting myself and my brother, because it was like, um, so I have really connected it to that, actually, to the point where I just learned that I just need to just shut up and put up, that nobody's interested in helping me, that I'm insignificant, that it doesn't matter. It wasn't until year 6, when she retired, that a male teacher started. And I always remember him because he had the most wacky ties, and they were so bright and colourful, and he just had a bit of a colourful personality, and he was the total opposite. And I remember him actually identifying that I was falling behind. And he identified that I was struggling. I was struggling with things that I shouldn't have been struggling with at this point, and it was because I wasn't being taught. There was a lot of other things going on at the time, so but that's for other videos. I was being bullied by other kids. My parents had split up and were divorcing. I lost my home. Had to move in with my nan for a few months before we got our own place. There was a lot of change, a lot to navigate. There was a lot of overwhelm, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion, a lot of you know, there was a lot of everything. So there was a lot of other things going on that coincided at that time. I think being 10 years old was actually one of the hardest years of my life because everything I just went from one life and then I was catapulted into another, and it was nobody's fault, but I didn't really understand that. And it was sort of around that time that I started getting problems with my body. So if we all know it, we know it now as body dysmorphia, but I didn't know that then. But I did start to really hate myself, and I really started to dislike. I was really muscly. I was a dancer, and I was really muscly, really strong, really fit. But I used to look down and just think my body was ugly, because I used to have real muscles and abs, and but my ribs would stick out and stuff. And to me, I just would look down and just think I'm ugly. And I'd look at my legs and think I'm ugly. And that's what started at that time, coinciding with everything else and being bullied. And I've just pieced it all together and just come to realize that although I kind of knew on some level that things from that time had played a role, I've just come to realize that it really has impacted and shaped how I behave, how I respond to things, how I've reacted to things my whole life. I mean, I've really done a lot of work in the last, I think probably since 2018 onwards. I've really gone within and I've really done a lot of work to understand and change my behaviors. But I think the problem is you can kind of change yourself to a certain degree, but unless you address the underlying cause and the trigger, you can't ever move on from it. And this is what I've been suppressing. It's the fact that I've been peeling the layers off like an onion all these years. But I'm now finally at the bottom of that onion. I'm now finally at the final layers, and I'm now at the root. And I think that is the toughest part to face. And I think this is what is the hardest thing actually about mental health. And this is what's not understood, that antidepressants are not going to help you. And talking does help. It does, to a degree. You have to talk to the right person. And sometimes that doesn't mean a counsellor. Sometimes it just means whoever you feel safe talking to. And I think, like me, I just find it useful to talk to you guys. I did counselling for the longest of times, and anyone that knows me knows I'm a bloody chatterbox. I don't shut up. And I sometimes I'm just all talked out, and no amount of talking can help. But when I'm talking like this, I know that I'm sort of like voicing my thoughts, but in the same breath, I'm helping one other person. I know there's somebody out there that is desperate, that is struggling, that is suffering, is probably where I was, like, 8, 9 years ago. And this will resonate. And that is the whole point of this. That is the whole point of this. This is why I started mental health coaching through lockdown, because I was in such desperation. And then when I put my music online, and then I was using the music, I was then chatting through my streams, and I was using the music, and they're thinking, well, music helps me heal. So I started talking about that in my streams, and it started resonating with people, and people started coming to my streams. And then I realized that I was actually helping people, not just with my music, but from what I was saying. So I literally, I just get drained. I get so drained. If I disappear offline, or I stop streaming or anything like that, it's because I'm just mentally exhausted and I'm drained, and I just don't have the capacity. I end up ignoring a lot of things when I just don't have the capacity for it. And that's when I was talking about how I can only do the basics, and I go back to the basics of things that I don't have to think about. And it's kind of connecting that puzzle. And I'm kind of like found the final puzzle pieces, and I now am slowly putting the final puzzle pieces in that I've been piecing together for all these years. And it's going to be a fantastic, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to feel like a victory, because I've been searching for answers for such a long time, and I feel like I'm in those final, but now I've got the answers, I now have to face it. And then this is what this is all about, is like when we've got any issues in our life, and depression has kind of goes with the whole anxiety thing, because you get so low and so depressed about being anxious all the time, being panicky. But then when you start identifying your behaviors and how you respond to things, how you might overreact, or how you might, I've actually just come to realize that I actually sometimes I don't actually understand what people mean. I don't understand, like, they might write something and I'll take it the complete wrong way, but they don't mean it in the way they've said it. A bit like when I've said stuff, when I was talking about the skirt um, story, I can say things and people have taken it out of context. And I do the exact same. I take things out of context sometimes, like, because I'll read it, and this is why I hate text messaging. This is why I prefer voice notes or talking on the phone or video calls, because expression is really important. Seeing someone's face, their facial expressions, and hearing someone's tone of voice really makes a difference to the actual context of a message. So when you write a message, I mean, you'll probably find that if I write a message to somebody, I'm putting emojis in, and I'll probably overuse them. But the reason is because I'm trying to set a tone so that people know that I'm not being funny, or I'm not, or I'm actually joking, or so I'm really consciously aware, and I don't want to offend anybody, I don't want to hurt anyone. And I've actually started to realize, because everything I used to do and say was taken out of context. Um, I'm really like go to town now with, like, making sure that whatever I write or say is taken the right way. But I've actually come to realize that I just can't control that, because I can't control other people's thoughts or their feelings. And I've still had it used against me, even as an adult in relationships. I've still had it used against me, even when I don't understand. And admittedly, there have been times where I haven't sort of owned up to the fact that I was wrong. Um, and I'll own that, but ultimately in the last few years I've tried to really learn that, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to just hold your hands up and say, oh, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And I've been like that for the most part for a long time, many years. But there have been moments where I've fallen off the bandwagon, but that's in states of stress, states of anxiety, states of fight and flight. And a lot of the time when those misunderstandings have happened, or somebody's twisted my words and used it against me, which still happens now, not so much now, but has happened in recent years, I just sit there and I think, and my responses to those people, when I used to sort of like respond and actually have, um, I don't know what the right word is, I'd actively say stuff back, and my responses were based on my past traumas, because I was just, I think when I sort of realize it now in my subconscious, I was just being treated exactly like I was when I was back at school. When all these other things happened, I was just, again, insignificant. I wasn't being listened to. I wasn't being acknowledged. I wasn't being recognized. I was just basically having to shut up and put up because somebody else told me so. It was like somebody else was adamant they were right, adamant that what they were saying was true, wasn't prepared to listen to what I had to say, and no matter what I said would be wrong, and I would have to just put up and shut up, and ultimately, you can't be like that. You can't be like that. So I've come to realize that it is childhood trauma that I have been suppressing because I didn't want to face it. It's not that I didn't know, I just didn't want to face it. But I'm being forced to, because there's only so much you can ignore stuff in life. And when something's meant for you, things will ramp up, things will get loud, and the universe won't let you let it lie. When something is supposed to happen and it's meant for you, there will be a series of events, and then you will be pushed. And if you go with it, it's less painful, it's less suffering. But when you show resistance and you try to ignore it like I've been doing, it hurts and the pain comes, and I went into fight and flight. I started suffering. I started having issues because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face it because I knew it was going to be painful to face it. And it is painful. It is fucking painful. Because you have to relive it briefly. You have to relive it briefly to let it go. And that's what I've got to do now. I'm in that phase. I've sort of come out into a recovery phase, because when I'm in fight and flight, it's like the other day, I was saying to my partner that I'd come out of it, and we were having conversations, and I said to him, I was really struggling to keep up with our conversations, and I said, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I can't keep up. And then I was saying, I actually don't remember some of the things he was saying to me. I was like, I don't know why I don't remember this. And this is the problem when I'm in fight and flight. There will be memory glitches. I make mistakes. With, like I said, I can only do things that I don't have to think about, and I make stupid mistakes, especially with admin and stuff. But at the end of the day, it is how it is. But I did say to my partner as well that it was as a result of past experiences and traumas that led to how I am today, and how I ultimately react, and how I ultimately deal with things. And I suppose the truth is, I don't deal with stress. I suppress it and ignore it because I don't know what to do, and that's when the panic and anxiety just kicks in, and I just tie myself up in knots about the stupidest of things, even when they don't matter. So, and I do get things wrong. But I'm very consciously aware of it. And I think this is the point. When you're consciously aware, you can make changes. You can catch yourself saying something or doing the wrong thing, and then you can ultimately own it, and you can change it. And this is where I'm not prepared to keep looping round now. I've changed a lot of things, and I've worked on a lot of things. I've really gone within, and I want to be the best version of myself. And I'm now at that point where this is the final crack now, because if I'm going to move forward and have all the things that I want in life for me and my children, and if I'm going to be with my partner, this is where I have to really let go of this childhood trauma that is going to hold me back, because it's held me back all my life. And that is the truth. I will say, my children saved me. Before I had my kids, I was actually really starting to struggle, to the point where I was really struggling with, what's my purpose? What is my purpose in this life? And then I was blessed with Isla. And as much as it was a shock and it was hard being a single mum, she gave me purpose. She gave me purpose, and she gave me a reason to keep going and to get up every day. And and then Albie came along, and not only did I have another purpose to keep going, but he ultimately was given to me to teach me about me, because he is the reason I woke up to myself. He is the reason that I understand who I am, how I am, and why I am the way I am. His autism diagnosis was treated and given to me like it was a life sentence. Like, that's it now. Your life's over, and he won't have a life. That's how it was presented to me. And that's how society deems it. And that's how I literally look at people now that are in the early stages of their journey with children, getting diagnosis of whether it's ADHD, autism, or showing signs of neurodivergence in some format. Ultimately, I just look at those people and I think, those poor people, because they're going to have it attested that, it's that's it now, and that life's going to be hard and it's never going to get any better, and it's always going to be like, restricted. But it's not true. It's not true. Since I took Albie out of school and I started home educating him and doing it in such a way that suits him, he is thriving and his mental health has improved no end. And I don't regret pulling Isla out of secondary school for the final 2 years either, because her mental health was at rock bottom. And I did the whole of college on dial-up internet and got distinctions. So in my mind, it was like, well, I don't want my children to go through what I went through, and I don't want them to ultimately end up like me, suffering, struggling. And it was already going that way. And I kind of feel like I've saved my children from the mental trauma that they could have ended up with as an adult. Isla is such a well-balanced 19-year-old. She has, she has her off days, she has her struggles, but ultimately she's so well-balanced, and I kind of understand her completely now, and I know that when something's wrong, and ultimately I know when I need to coach her. But she's happiest with her alpacas at the farm. So she works on a farm and they have 8 alpacas, and she literally, whenever she arrives now, it's like, oh, oh, because it's, she's like the leader of the pack. I know you don't call them a pack. I don't know what you call. I know it's a clan of cats, pack of wolves. I don't know what you call a cluster of alpacas, but she absolutely adores just being with animals and being in nature, and she's at her finest. And she literally, like, when she's mucking out the donkeys or she's mucking out the alpacas, she's at her happiest. She's like, I was like, and I was laughing with her the other day because I was saying, I've never known somebody so happy to literally be in shit. Literally. When I pick her up, a lot of the time she absolutely reeks. It's quite amusing, but my kids are doing so well, and I don't regret it a single moment. I don't regret a single moment. It was scary. I'm not going to lie, it was scary to go against the system, because all my life I'd thought school was the default, that school was mandatory. So to then learn that it's not, to then learn that home education is the default, and then to realise that I always hated sending my children to school. I used to be in floods of tears dropping them off. Um, and then I'd go home and be in floods of tears for hours, and then I'd missed them the whole time. And then when it was holidays, I loved having my kids home, and then I didn't want to send them back. So to find out that home education was an option and it was the default, I was just like, it's not, I don't do things lightly. I always take time to process, to understand. I'm very much knowledge is power. And I went into the ins and outs of the whole thing. I literally found a website, Educational Freedom. Please look it up. They are an organisation. I actually do donate to them because they are a charity organisation that donate their time to helping people go deregister their children, and finding the resources for home education, teaching them about how all the options, the legalities, giving templates for letters to the local authority and the schools, templates for reports, because you have to submit, but the reports aren't what you think. So I would definitely send you to Educational Freedom, and read up everything you need to know there. And if you get into any issues and you need support, they will then help you through anything. They are absolutely fantastic, and they got me through. I had a few questions and they answered all my questions, and I went in literally knowing everything I needed to know, set up for any like comebacks. If they were going to try and deny, I knew what I needed to do with next steps. So they are absolutely a fantastic organisation, and I don't regret a single day of it. It's been, I'm trying to think how long it's been now, 4 years I think with Albie. I mean, Isla's gone through college. She did 2 years of, I got her a home tutor, to do English GCSE. She went to college. She did maths and English, but um, she still struggled with her maths. So when she went to college, she did an animal care course, and she was just doing her maths on the side to retake it. But she went to college with an English GCSE, and I will tell you now that GCSEs are not even mandatory either. Functional skills are just as good. So I'm going to have to do another video on that because I'm getting off topic. But the point is, I home educated my children because I did college at home because I was having severe panic attacks, but I still got all distinctions. So it proved that if you want something bad enough, you can get it, and you can get it in different ways. And there are so many options available to people now that it's not the be all and end all, and that mental health is number one. Mental health is so important. And recognizing differences in neurodivergence is so important because everybody learns differently, even all neurotypicals do. And even neurotypicals will suffer with stress and anxiety and things like that. It's not just neurodivergence at all, it's everybody. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different way of learning, and the old format needs to die. The old format needs to be thrown out, and a new format needs to come in. Vocational courses need to be a thing from 14 onwards, in my opinion. Children need to be able to follow their strengths and their passions, and they'll then thrive, and they'll then realise that they'll get the best out of them. So that is exactly what I'm facing at the moment, guys. I'm working through all my past childhood trauma, and that is what I've been ignoring. That's what I've been suppressing, and I've just got to face it, no matter how much it hurts and how horrible it is to face. But I also have to own the fact that they were things that I learned, and they're things that I have to unlearn, and I now have to learn a new way of being. So I've been learning a new way of being in general anyway, but I now have to find a new way of coping with stress and anxiety, and a new way of coping with everyday life. I have to find a new way to do it, and that's not easy. That's not easy, and I may have to seek out a therapist or a coach myself, So as much as I'm sat here coaching for what I am at the level for, there's different levels, isn't there? So there's people that are like way up here above me that have done all of this work that I'm doing now that can coach me, and I'm here to coach those that are in the stages that I was in for the last 8 years, if you like, and before that, I can help anybody to a degree. I can talk about my own experiences. I can talk about therapies and things that I've tried, what worked and what didn't. But ultimately, it's up to you to help yourself and find what works for you. And I would definitely recommend looking at all the holistic ways, because you will find something that does work for you. Hypnotherapy worked for one of my brothers when he was suffering with anxiety and panic and depression. Hypnotherapy really helped, and he's doing really well now. But diet is a massive, massive thing when it comes to panic and anxiety and depression. Diet really plays a real big, massive role, as does exercise. You have to get outdoors, and even like I said, just go for a walk. Just go for a walk. But exercise and diet really massively shapes it, and having the right vitamins and minerals in your system. It's a process. It's a long process, and like I said, I've been on this journey for so many years now, waking up to myself, waking up to the matrix, waking up to the reality. And as much as I struggle, it is also very, very freeing. It's very, very freeing, because I know that I can move forward and I can really be happy, especially with my partner. Because the one thing that I don't want it to spoil is my relationship. I don't want it to spoil friendships. I don't want it to spoil anything. I'm just not, that person. And as much as I am really crap at times, I'm so crap at getting back to people sometimes. I'm so crap at, sometimes I reply in my head and think I've responded, and then I realise I haven't. And I'm like, crap. Sometimes I'm just procrastinating, or I'm just so far behind that I'm overwhelmed that I'm trying to keep up, and I just feel like I'm drowning. Um, and I know that sometimes I just think, oh, am I just making up excuses for myself? But I really do struggle a lot of the time when I'm in my own head, when I'm in panic mode, and I am a worrier. I am a worrier. I worry about everything, and I know that it's been shaped from when I was a child because I just worry that everything is going to go wrong. I'm worried that everything is going to blow up in my face. I just worry that, if something good happens, that it's just going to end, because that is how it's always been. I suffered with abandonment issues for a long time and trust issues for a long time as a result of a lot of things that happened in my childhood. And like I said about the body dysmorphia, I'm really starting to have flashbacks about my thoughts, and I can see myself looking, and I can see how my body looked, and and my thoughts. And like I said, I play things in my head like a video, so it really hits me hard because I'm not just thinking about it; I'm actually seeing it in real time again. Um, so I've got a lot of things to deal with, a lot of things to deal with to really let it go. I need to just, I always imagine like when you're letting go of something that you're putting it in a box and you're locking it with a key and you throw the key away and then you just like throw the box out to sea and that's the end of it. And that is exactly what I'm envisioning in my head. That's what I need to do with my childhood trauma and all the conditioning. I just need to kind of let it all go. And I now need to start again and relearn how to be, how to cope with stress, how to cope with um, the negatives in life. I just need to learn how to cope with it and to just sort of shrug it off because I've always admired people that can just go, oh well, no big deal. Um, I'd say one of my brothers is a little bit like that. He's very laid back and he's just whatever. Not to say that things don't bother him or get to him or he gets annoyed about stuff because he is human, obviously, but he is probably one of the most laid back people I know. And unlike me, who stresses and worries and just doesn't cope with a lot of things in life, he's the exact opposite in that respect, and I do admire him for that. Don't tell him I said that. um, but yeah, so a lot of it is looking at your past and realizing. So, I mean, yeah, I'm quirky. I know I'm neurodivergent even without a diagnosis, and I don't want a diagnosis. I don't need labels because it's not necessary. I'm a functioning adult. I can get stuff done. I can run a business. I can do all sorts of things. I'm really, but it's just once I face my past and I face the childhood traumas and I learn to deal with them and let them go, and I will probably start to boost my self-esteem and my self-confidence again, and I will really start to because they talk about self-love, which is something I've talked about, but I'm obviously really delving into it now, and the point that self-love is so important. And people would say sort of like it's a bit of a like, what, you're so up yourself, what the hell, that's how society has conditioned us to believe in self-love. But it's not about being up yourself, it's about actually just being comfortable in your own skin, liking who you are, and just having that self-confidence to know that, when you are good at something, just acknowledge that you're good at it, and instead of people thinking, oh, you're so up yourself, saying you're so good. I am good at my job. I am a great DJ. I'm a great DJ and children's entertainer, and I am good at what I do, and I'm not afraid to say that now. But for the most of years I would have just been like, oh no, you know but I am, and I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of myself because I still can't sing in front of an audience because I was bullied so badly and criticised so badly for it, that it is the one hurdle I'm still struggling to get over. So maybe if I can let go of all this childhood trauma, that'll be the one thing that I can do. But it hasn't stopped me. It hasn't stopped me becoming a successful DJ, running a successful events business. It hasn't stopped me from writing songs and unlocking that side that because I've wanted to have my own music since I was 4 years old, and I first sang on stage when I was 4. I've been in countless pantomimes, and I was a professional dancer. I was just destined to be on stage because I was always destined to just help people. And the one thing I've always wanted to do, and I remember this as a child, I used to silly, isn't it? I used to go to my nan's house when I was a kid, And so even through all the trauma that was going on, I was going to my nan's house, and we would literally, I used to play with a lot of her ornaments and things, but I do remember that she had all these scarves. She's always worn scarves, and she had all these ornaments and all these beads and things that I used to play with, and I used to wrap them up in her scarves. So I'd wait until she was asleep, and then I would wrap them up because Christmas was always one of my favourite times of year. And I'm going to try and piece this all together with my personal traumas, but I've just sort of thought about this now that I used to wrap all these things up that I used to play with in scarves, and I'd leave them at the end of her bed so that when she woke up she had these gifts to open like it was Christmas morning. And I used to do this a lot every time I stayed at her house, and I'm actually starting to think that that was connected to the trauma somewhere, because all I wanted to do was make my nan happy. All I wanted to do was make her smile, and all I associated was that giving presents made people happy. Giving presents made people smile, and the one thing I loved was waking up on Christmas morning and finding all these presents. And it wasn't the presents. I guess it was just, I guess I associate it with love, and I was just giving my nan love and showing her love and affection and just making her happy. And the one thing I just want to give the world is, and I've always wanted this since being on a stage, was seeing people smile. I love what I do because I love seeing people smile. I love just lighting up a room. I don't do what I do for money. I do what I do because I love it. Sorry. I mean, I have to make a living to keep a roof over my kids' heads and stuff, but that's what I do. That's why I've always done what I've done. That's what's always motivated me, is just to make people smile. And I think I realise now that what's drove me as an adult is because I've lived with, and I think I understand the whole alias thing now, that when I'm behind my decks and I'm entertaining and I'm like on a stage, I morph into high energy holes, and I separate that from Holly. It's like I have two personalities, and I'm up there confident. I'm the best version of myself. I'm doing everything that I love to do, and I'm making people happy. And I think the whole point of that is because I recognize that people, although they're at a party smiling and they're talking to people, they might be up dancing. I recognize that in everyday life they're probably not like that, because when I go out I let loose and it de-stresses me, and I forget, and music makes me forget. Music takes me out of that stress. It takes me to wherever I want to go, and it's always helped me to survive, and it's always helped me to remember, oh, I remember what it's like to smile. And I think that's why music is so entwined in me, and how, because I love music, and it just really, and I just know how much it impacts somebody's day, how much it impacts somebody's mood, because if I listen to the right music, it will pull me out of a slump. It will make me uplift me. I mean, Five Keep On Moving is a song that I go back to time and time and time and time again, because if you listen to the lyrics, and it's so uplifting and so happy-go-lucky, I can listen to that on repeat when I'm really down, really low, and I'm having a really bad day. I will just put it on repeat, and I will just listen to it over and over again, because it's like an affirmation. When people say, oh, speak affirmations, positive ones to remap your brain and to help you, it is so true. It is an affirmation. Songs to me are like affirmations, and if you listen to the right ones with the right lyrics, with the most upbeat music in the background, it really does live you. Because I can listen to instrumental stuff, but it has to be right. It has to be right. And I think this is why I've always had such an amazing imagination. Somebody could play me a piece of music when we used to do drama. They'd say like, oh, we want you to come up with a role play or a piece of a drama based on this music. I was fucking shit hot at that. Sorry about my swearing, but I'm just getting passionate now. I was shit hot at that, and I'm still, because I can just literally have music played to me, and I can just imagine so much. I can imagine this scene, this scenario, and yeah. So music is just so important, and I think this is why I'm just so passionate to just lift the world up with music. So, but yes, childhood trauma. if you're struggling and you're suppressing something and you have noticed behaviors in life, maybe it is linked to your past childhood traumas, something that you went through as a child. It's surprising actually how much that stays with us as we get older, and how it really shapes our behaviors, our responses, how we react to things, and why I personally shut down, why I inadvertently push people away, why I struggle on my own. So just a little bit of food for thought. But anyway, I'm not going to keep you any longer because I've just realised I've been ranting on for 45 minutes. So if you haven't noticed that I'm a chatterbox yet, you will have now. So anyway, happy Tuesday, superstars.